You get a little bit of tech in the mirror, too, by being able to play 3 Stone Rains in the sideboard. Now, if you were here for us in round 1 or 2, we had a conversation. Is from Alpha. So.
No, I knew you'd slip that in. All right. Noah, luckily, saving me from myself, shocking and a stomping ground, and kicking us off with a Utopia Sprawl.
And this is, what you want to be doing, getting this sort of double mana going really early. And this is, one of the strengths of this deck is how many things it has that can put 2 mana play on turn 2 to start slamming big things on turn 2.
And look at this. Austin, also the perfect 1-drop out of his deck. This is nice because, again, I have no idea how this matchup plays out. Seeing both decks firing on all cylinders with Clark having that turn 1 crab is going to be huge.
Yeah, and, a small thing to note, too, is that Austin probably has more fetches in hand, or at least if it has any lands, they're like swamps, right?
Yes.
You would want to save that fetch land for later. So Noah knows a lot of Millen's coming as another double land comes down as the Kozilek's command immediately killing that crab.
Okay, and look at this. We see reaching for tokens off to the side. Noah is just ramping with this, not drawing cards. This matchup is not going to be defined. It's not grindy, right? It's not defined by cardboard. It's just defined by playing to the battlefield.
Yeah. Noah wants to get something down that can take over the game. As, speaking of something coming down, here's Rune Crab.
Oh, all right. The second crab, and with that other fetch land, just like you said.
Yeah, the second crab is huge. Imagine, if the first crab was still in play as well, we'd be milling 6 cards twice here. That would be a fifth of the deck.
All right, well, fetch shock. Austin has more where that came from.
Yeah, and it looks like we're already doing a little card type count. I think we have 4 already. So, Emrakul dangerously close. Also, things like World Breaker can get milled to the graveyard and then returned as well. So that's something that Austin needs to be keeping in mind.
All of a sudden, I think I'm starting to piece together who's favored.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of good things going for Noah to fight against this. But also, if you can't put the pressure on, that's perfect for Austin,
okay.
right?
Well, here's Preordain. Top, bottom, found at least 1 card that Austin likes.
Yeah.
And a pass back. This is that crucial first 7 mana turn from Noah. This is something that we're going to see a lot from Eldrazi decks.
Of note, if you're a Mill fan at home, Austin Clark doesn't seem to have Extirpate in the main deck, a card that you commonly see go along with Surgical Extraction here, which means as we Surgical Extraction, we're not going to be having as much as this, where sometimes the Mill players can just sort of get you out of just threats in general, as Karn and Emrakul the Promised are the last cards in hand here for Noah.
Ooh, and it looks like that was an unsuccessful Cabal Therapy mode attempt.
Yeah, I think we were trying to get the lands out of there, but unfortunately we'll just have to deal with, knowing everything and getting a couple cards out of deck.
Perfectly serviceable, if you ask me. Karn the Great Creator, one of the things that really makes this deck shine, despite not being an Eldrazi, it gives you a ton of versatility out of the sideboard that you normally couldn't afford to main deck.
Yeah, and even though you see players a little lower on it now, we're not seeing the full 15 from a lot of them, you still have a lot of options, especially in this red-green build. And one of the advantages is, there's less things vying for that competition in your sideboard. So you get to have more artifacts, which gives you a little bit more game in Game 1, which is huge. Randomly KOing a matchup because you have Disruptor Flute is something that, not a lot of decks get to do and they can lean on in the post-board games.
Right, being a bit more explosive, playing a bit more to the table, and in this case being more linear, we do see the extremely robust Karn board on Noah's side. This is something where there are 3 Stone Rains out of the board, 3 copies of the Stone Brain, and then boom, 9 different one-ofs to choose from. And you can see he picks up a sideboard and starts thinking about it.
Yeah, and Liquid Metal Coating is so tempting for me always. There it is. I also do, I just love to blow up a land, but, Liquid Metal Coating there from the Brothers' War coming down, and that means we're going to be able to turn one of these lands into artifacts, so it won't be able to produce mana, and then the future turns we can start blowing them up.
Right. This is the spot where somehow Austin's the one under the gun, despite it not quite looking that way before.
Yeah, things turn fast here, especially with all this mana for Noah. We're on turn 3.
Right. Part of what's so strong about this Eldrazi deck is it's able to just produce a ton of resources with something like Karn here to then turn the corner and convert that into an unwinnable board state.
All right, we're going to see a mill here for 6 as a crab into a basic island.
Uh-oh, there's that World Breaker.
Yeah, if we start flooding out for Noah, that's going to be a good one to have in the graveyard.
I thinking about his next play. There are a lot of instances in the deck, and there are cards like Drown in the Lock that Austin could be thinking about here.
Yeah, Noah, I think at about like 34-ish cards in deck, so still a lot of cards to work through, but we're getting close.
34-ish, buddy.
34-ish. 34-ish. That's how many cards left in deck.
I need someone to clip this. I need someone to see how ish this 34 is.
When they check and they reverse the game state and someone puts it was 34, I'll know.
Oh, listen.
Emrakul to Promise End.
I want it as much as you do, but not as much as Noah wants to cast that Emrakul to Promise End.
Yeah, it's funny here, too. I mean, it's probably going to happen, but there is some amount of, like, am I supposed to blow up the Watery Grave? Because there may be a black card hand I want to cast. You know, like a Fatal Push that's kind of dead in the matchup. Might kill this crab and might be game-ending here. So let's see if it resolves. Now, notably, Drown the Lock probably can answer this Emrakul.
Okay, here's Liquid Metal Coating going after the Watery Grave. Hits the graveyard. Wow, Austin might just be running on fumes.
And this sometimes happens with the mill deck. You know, you have a lot of cards that are all about milling, right? And then we're interacting sort of interestingly. So it looks like Drown the Lock was not actually able to answer Emrakul. But, wow. Our hand's a little awkward, and, you know, I'm really curious about how we're going to navigate this spot here.
Yeah, so there's a Field of Ruin, which looks like it could be a bunch of landfall triggers for Ruin Crab. Theoretically, we could even see Field of Ruin fail to find on Austin's side, but is that worth it?
Yeah, it's a real question, because, I mean, you're also giving Austin a land back, and currently you have the Karn engine going. So, I don't know, like, you're getting that one mill trigger. Yeah, and it looks like you do have to mill with the crab, if I remember correctly. So, not worth the spot there.
Oh, so interesting, because Austin's going to get to play it either way.
Yeah, but you're committing Austin's turn to this, which I think is the big difference.
Sure.
If Austin's milling 6 for you, well, your Emrakul's attacking. And if we have something like a Walking Ballista in our sideboard, that would be lethal. Looks like we're a little light, but, Carmen, Liquid Metal Coating, you can make it a 2/2 creature. Get the attacks, and that's 15. Bam.
I want to see it. I'm going to be. That's one of the fun things with cards is when it actually starts to become an aggressive card. I know we see this in Vintage sometimes, but it doesn't really come up in Modern.
Definitely. We will need a way to clear that, but with the Kozilek's command or return, you know, you can definitely clean that stuff up.
All right, well, land in a mill and another crab.
And then Archive.
Archive Trap's nice.
That's a big one. 13 going down. And now there's another blocker in the way, too, so it's going to be a little harder. There's the Kozilek's return we talked about. There's 3 of the Kozilek's returns.
Okay, I mean, if Noah has another big creature, he can kill basically as much as possible here.
Yeah, and then turn Liquid Metal Coating on for lethal. Let's get a little count.
All right, 34-ish.
Is 16. The answer's 16. I'm a professional. I counted my cards. I saw what happened there.
Of course, of course.
As it does look like Noah is going to tick down on the Karn, go for Engineered Explosives. That's a great way to clean up the 2. Yeah, I mean, we're going to lose our Utopia Sprawl, but our opponent, we know, did not have a ton left over.
In a lot of ways, this is just Noah basically dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure, okay, this is a game I feel like I should win. How do I just make sure to take Austin from being 5% to win to 0% to win?
Yeah, and this attack putting Austin to 1 also turns off any of the black cards, right, and all the fetch lands, which matters a fair bit. It's going to need something. Yeah, okay, there we go. Pick them up.
Going to game 2.
Yeah, I mean, I know it looks very one-sided, but very close. Another Archive Trap there, and it could have been game.
And in a lot of ways, I almost wonder if this is a spot where there are just cards that Austin wants to get out of his deck.
Yeah, I mean, Austin has some cards in the main deck that are not very good. Fatal Push barely has any targets. You know, Sowing Micro Spawn and some spawns don't really count.
Right.
So we got to definitely want to get those out of our deck. And then there's some other things where it really depends on how you want to play your sideboarded games. I mean, we have 3 Consigned Memories. That's huge. I'm curious about, you know, is Leyline the Void something I'm going to bring in here as well? Now, we do have the 2 extra pates that I brought up earlier. Those are in the sideboard hanging out, so those could also come in. And with the amount of milling that Noah does, you know, with Malevolent Rumble and stuff, you might catch something early. quickly or have that information to do what you love there and Cabal Therapy somebody.
Right. I mean, there's the degree in that game where I think Noah would have had a really hard time without that copy of Emrakul the Promised End. Probably would not have been able to close the game before running out of cards in deck. So in a lot of ways, if Austin can just find ways to make it so Noah can't apply any pressure, maybe we even see something like Ensnaring Bridge come into that end. I think that's the recipe that Austin's looking for.
Yeah, definitely could see something like that, especially because I think the first Tasha's is a pretty easy cut. I could see even cutting more because, like we talked about earlier, a lot of CMC 7 and plus cards here in Noah's deck.
Yes.
Your Tasha's sometimes could easily hit 10 cards like you want. Very also easily could hit 3 cards, and when you're committing that much mana when these games are this tight, I think the first one makes a lot of sense. I'm curious to see how Austin wants to play it. Looking over, though, at Noah's sideboard, one of the interesting with the card deck is how many of these things I want to bring in versus leave. And against Mill also, do I just maybe want to bring some cards in and that's all?
Yeah, this one's really tough where I don't actually know how much Noah wants to be changing their deck after that game. It looks like they mostly did what they came there to do. And nothing in the sideboard is really going to make that much better or worse. I could see a copy or two of the Stone Brain coming in.
Yeah, I wonder on the Stone idea, I wonder if we're just supposed to bring in a Stone Rain or 2. Just up. A lot of people put their deck to 61 or 62 against Mill. It's not the end of the world. Like, the multiples of 3, getting a little higher can definitely matter. So, making it so basically after a mulligan, you have 55 cards left in deck can come up. So I could see just have a couple Stone Rains in, and, you have a bunch of ways to make 2 mana on turn 1, so turn 2 you just blow up their land. So I'm interested to see how Noah. I do agree though. I could imagine a world where we just no changes.
Just resubmit. I mean, there's also a degree where if you think something like Ensnaring Bridge is coming, or if say it shows up in this game, then going into game 3, the Stone Brain might just come in as a hammer against that. But what are these players playing for?
A lot this weekend.
Oh yeah, World Championship invites, Pro Tour invites, Regional Championship invites du jour, and nice chunk of change.
Yeah, a lot of cash on the line along with those Pro Tour invites. You can see we've divided up here a little easier for you to see, but our top 32 this weekend will go to Pro Tours in 2025 along with the Regional Championship round 3. And then, you still get a lot for playing and down to 128th that is.
Right, and both of the finalists are going to World Championship 2025. That's just the dream for so many competitive Magic players.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this earlier in the broadcast, but for a lot of people, it's something that seems so unattainable for so long. And to change the World Championship to be bigger, and in my opinion, a lot more like competitive in that way too, the larger field, right? You're able to get people in there who maybe, get their shot when they were just a little shy in the past. Having that is so amazing, and I can't wait to see who's going to get that spot this weekend.
Right, and for a lot of players, this is just one of the earlier steps, but it is a step in the process to getting there.
Yeah, it's a big thing. And, it's something that's so alluring. We see people who are already qualified for the Pro Tour coming out to battle this weekend just for their shot at making Worlds.
Right, all of a sudden, I think Ray Zhang is someone that we covered earlier that's already qualified for a Pro Tour or 2 after this, but playing in Worlds just validates so much effort.
And it would be amazing to see either of these players get to play and live out that dream. But we got to focus on round number 5 right now. Long way between here and the Pro Tour, especially if you're Noah.
Noah Blaisdell up a game.
Yep.
Really just needs to win this round and one more to be locked up for at least day 2.
Yep, and it's one of those things, too, where in those spots, you got to really keep your head in the moment, right? It's very easy to think about what you're talking about and be like, I'm about to wrap it up. Maybe I'll lose round 7. I'll get a little unlucky. I'll have some complaint equity for my friends. Run round 8, win round 9, go get a good dinner, come back tomorrow, make it to the Pro Tour. But you really got to keep your head in the zone, right? And be like, okay, I've got to play good Magic right now. There's still so many rounds left. We talked about this earlier, Carbon. One way to look at this is the third of the way mark. We're doing 15 rounds of Swiss, so if you're not in the top 8, you still have 10 rounds of Magic to play. That's a lot. That's double what you've played so far this weekend. That's just math.
Yep, I think it's arithmetic, but whatever it is, Austin Clark has the backside of Sink into Stupor into a crab. Not bad.
Sunken Pool.
I had a different playtest name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was Deja Vu.
Yeah, well, the back wasn't.
Yeah, I don't remember what the back in the playtest was.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have a back.
Whoa! Yes, it did. Hold on now.
They're one-sided cards when we were playtesting, though.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Anyways, fetch.
It had a land on the back. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know its name because it was Deja Vu the whole time I was playtesting it.
All right, Ruined Crab, Utopia Sprawl. Hold on. I I've heard this one before.
Yeah, speaking of deja vu.
Oh, that was nice. That one was actually nice. Normally, I'm just being polite. That was really good.
Yeah, thanks. I really like this play as well. You know, we saw in game 1, we sort of kind of had to put on a stomping ground, right?
Yes.
This game, getting the basic means something like Field of Ruin isn't going to keep us off our 2 mana.
Yep, exactly. Being able to sort of play around those things, find the little edges is going to be huge. And look at this. This is the 4 mana turn 2 on the back of Ugin's Labyrinth that this deck really wants to find, but no, it doesn't have a 4-drop.
Very interesting. It tells me there's probably something that we really like in our hand that we maybe, put in from our sideboard, or we're just, some big 7-drop we're trying to get down.
Is there a chance that they're playing around Drown in the Loch?
Totally possible. Looks like Kozilek's Command is what we were setting up.
That makes some sense for fetch and response from Austin. Going to be at least 3 more cards getting milled.
All right. A bunch of lands, essentially.
Yep. Well, they're not lands for Emrakul the Promised End.
Yeah,
not lands.
Notable. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, one of them, the green Ponder goes to the yard. Malevolent Rumble.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Drown in the Loch. I now know what that one was. I didn't know that secret layer before.
Excellent.
It's a very nice piece of art.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the pass back, and now all of a sudden, Noah's doing this thing that's probably so horrifying if you're in Austin's seat, counting all the cards in the graveyard, where if you're Austin, you just have to go, hold on, how many could it really be?
I think it's definitely 5, and it might have been 6.
It's high.
It's high.
It's really high.
Yeah, with Emrakul the Promised End, that would be 8 on the mana value if it was only 5. And we have 5 mana with our land for turn here. We're very close when a lot of our lands count for 2 when it comes to Eldrazi. You get there so quickly.
There's got to be a sigh of relief in Austin's seat that it was Verdant Catacombs that came down to the land for turn and not one of the double lands.
Yeah. There is also, an interesting moment here where Austin has this fetch land, hasn't really used it, and could have used it maybe to snag something. So Noah's thinking, okay, maybe there's not a surgical. This might be my time to try and get a Rumble down. But it could also just be because Austin has another crab in hand.
Sure.
And these small little things of figuring out what's going on there really matter. You check your graveyard, you're like, okay, there's a Devourer, I have one in hand. Can I put this underneath the land or something? How can I play around this potential situation? Because I think this is a spot to go for it. And speaking of going for it, here comes the Talisman.
Is that one going for it?
Yeah, cast a spell.
All right, fair enough. Sowing Mycospawn. Another search. Austin Clark, do you have the Archive Trap?
Yeah, this would be the turn to do it, and multiples could be game ending. And you need to do it soon. Noah's going up to 8 mana when it comes to Eldrazi now. So that Emrakul, the Promised End, is online.
Definitely looming. I also like that art for Eldrazi Temple a lot.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, here's that fetch off Polluted Delta. Ooh, is it Surveillance time?
Yeah, the Dismal Backwaters might be where we're going.
Undercity Sewers.
Gosh darn it. Well, what a great feature match we have, though, with that Surveilling 3.
It's gaining 1 Surveil, not gaining 1 life.
Stone Rain did come in here from Noah.
Okay. I mean, we saw last game, Noah got a ton of equity off of blanking Austin's 1 black source. I think it's reasonable to take that approach here, especially if you just want a couple more cards in your deck anyway.
Yeah, if you want a couple of cards, you have a couple you're maybe not super happy with, totally reasonable. Just I don't have many good tools, but I don't know, maybe you keep a 2-lander and I blow up one of your lands.
Yep.
Sounds like a reasonable thing that occurs.
Especially, and I think you touched on this a little bit, whenever you're on the play, just being able to have, say, the Utopia Sprawl or the Ugin's Labyrinth opening into Stone Rain your first land drop, you can end up stymieing so much development potential.
And there's Surgical Extraction on Emrakul, the Promised End.
Let's see.
And
yeah. Out of the hand, leaving Noah with just a Wooded Foothills.
Yeah, we have a Sowing Mycospawn to try and close the door, but those big mill spells are going to do more than that. And now Austin also gets to see, okay, what's left in your deck? What threats do I have to beat? It looks like Devourer of Destiny was one of the few big ones left behind.
Okay, I mean, at this point, Austin does still need to beat things like Worldbreaker.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about Ugin's Labyrinth, even though it does mean you're maybe exposed to a Field of Ruin, is it's hiding over there. Can't get discarded, can't get surgical, and we can pop it into our hand later in this game.
Uh-oh.
All right, well, not if it gets Field of Ruin. One of the Karns get milled as well. That's another potential win condition.
Oh, my God. Okay, that was the Field of Ruin going after that Ugin's Labyrinth that kind of was hiding away a World Breaker for Noah. This was such an incredible turn for Austin.
Yeah, this was huge. And we're going to get another mill for 3 here because another land's entering the battlefield for Austin. I mean, Noah's lost a lot of game-ending tools this turn. Obviously, all the Emrakul's, we milled a Karn. It's a tough spot to be. Another Karn.
Yeah, at this point, Noah's running out of ways to actually kill their opponent. Glimpse the Unthinkable takes 10 more cards out of Noah's deck.
Yeah, and now it's time for a little counting.
All right, 34-ish?
17.
This is a nice, I'm glad we're friends in real life moment.
Yeah, we totally are. All right, as we are going to see a Noah untap. And we are doing a little counting. I mean, we still have a lot of mana, but...
All right, it starts with an attack for 3 with Sowing Mycospawn. If you're going to win the game, it starts there. And Austin is at 8. He's done a lot of fetching this game.
Yeah, and here comes World Breaker.
Not a bad draw.
Yeah, I mean, that's lethal on board. If there's a Devourer of Destiny in hand for Noah and we're able to cast it next turn, that would remove the crab and we would have lethal.
Okay, this game's close.
It's very close.
It doesn't feel like it should be close, but it is. There's another crab, another land, Otawara the land. That kind of signals that the other card in Austin's hand is a spell.
And Fractured Sanity is going to mill 14.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 cards, game 3.
You'll notice 10 plus 6 plus 1 was 17. And now Austin's going to go up 1 game, and it's going to be 1-1 heading into game 3.
What is 34 if not 2 17s persevering?
So true when you really think about it. But no, I think you just saw a lot of what's good about Austin's deck, right? If you aren't pressuring him to win, there's a lot of game to this, and you just get to kind of kill your opponents and fire an Axis they're not ready for. Like, Noah doesn't have cards for this matchup.
Right, and something that I love is just watching these game plans evolve game over game, and I'm stoked to see how decks are going to evolve as we go to the 2nd regional championship in Charlotte just next month.
Yeah, March 7th through the 9th, we're going to be there for the 2nd round of regional championships for this cycle. So it's going to be modern again. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be covering that as well, you and I, along with some others. And I can't wait to see sort of what happens this weekend that informs there. We saw already how a narrative was broken. Nobody really thought Energy was going to be superseded when it comes to the top dog. Now, to be fair, it's an exact tie. When 203 players for Energy and Breach, but players thought that's just not going to happen. Breach isn't going to pick up that much in popularity. People won't do it, and they did, and that has huge implications. If you're playing this event, we can't wait to see you there.
And in that vein, this Eldrazi ramp deck is something that has really started to prove itself over the course of the last few regional championships. It really made a name for itself at the regional championship in Prague recently. And now we're seeing a bunch of players bringing it, and it's our number 3 most represented deck in the field. Yeah,
I think players really overestimated how much consigned memory was going to keep this deck in check.
Yep.
And it's good against them, don't get me wrong, but one counterspell is not enough for what these decks are doing. And that is a big, big game. And these Eldrazi decks are doing very powerful things.
I'm really interested to see how the play-draw dynamics end up shifting things from here, because I think it was really interesting how much I felt like Austin was hanging on by a thread at the end of that game, despite kind of having all the tools.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we were missing was sort of one big mill spell before that point, right?
Yep.
We didn't really have a ton that game. But it also shows, if there isn't pressure, we don't really need that much, right? And the pressure came near the end, but a turn sooner and maybe game over there for Austin.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways we saw Mill do its own sort of Delver impression, right? Where there are a bunch of things where your Hedron Crabs are just insect elaborations, right? They're chipping in for damage every turn, and it is basically the same amount of damage when you factor in something like fetch lands. And then we saw Drown in the Lock, we saw that Surgical Extraction, that Field of Ruin act as small, subtle, disruptive pieces that didn't hold Noah back from playing a whole game, but did keep him at arm's length until Austin was able to, quote-unquote, get them to 0 life.
Yep. And speaking of which, a little bit of a slow start this game. Noah just played a fetch land. Is going to fetch for a Surveil land at the end of Austin's turn. Austin just with a preordain off a basic island in the passing.
Ooh, I wonder if this is just rattlesnaking for the Ugin's Labyrinth into Stone Rain.
Maybe. It would be very sick if it was. Also, what about some, potential archive traps here for Austin?
Ooh. All right, the mill.
Okay.
And the pass. You can see the very respectful. You got anything?
Yep. Yeah, I searched you got anything. And, so I've seen plenty of games end on the spot because, you fetched early. Archive trap hits you for 24 and you're down.
Yep. All right, Eldrazi Temple and pass. Slow draw from Noah so far.
Slow draw. Maybe a hand that could have potentially sort of gone off with the right hit, but has a lot of mana for Eldrazi and not a lot for the other things. As Ruin Crab comes on down.
All right. As well as a fetch land. Sight for Sore Eyes if you're a mill fan.
Yeah. There's that World Breaker. One of the better ones to get milled.
Okay. Kozilek's come in on the instep. This is such a nice card here.
Yeah, I mean, the card being Kindred, so it's an Eldrazi, means that Temple does tap for 2 there, and we're going to be able to actually get rid of this crab. We saw earlier in the tournament, Reizang just went for an X is 0 just to draw a card. Luckily, we get a little bit of extra value here for Noah.
All right, so very, very quick fetch shock from Austin. Going to mill a few more cards on Noah's side after we finish shuffling. I'm feeling a consign.
Yeah, that could definitely be it. I mean, these crabs are super important. It's important to think of this like a little bit like, oh, this is actually an extra pate. And we're going to go for the World Breaker there.
Oh, and I think this is with the crab trigger on the stack because
Correct.
Austin doesn't want to mill another World Breaker.
Exactly.
He wants to get the cards out of the deck first.
And gets one from the hand for Noah. Noah's rest of the hand is just, an Ugin's Sanctum, 2 Karns and a Talisman. And now we're going to get these World Breakers out of the deck and then get 3 cards milled.
And this
Great
is,
play.
Okay, Karn the Great Creator, basically everything that Noah needs at this point and all he really has.
Yeah, I mean, Karn is good, but notably, once again, we don't have those big game enders. We don't even have the Cityscape Leveler that we see some players have this in their sideboards this weekend. I think the biggest thing we have is that Liquid Metal Coating, which we saw in Game 1.
It's fine.
It's huge, yeah. If you cut your opponent off mana and they can't cast their spells, they can't win.
It isn't fast. That's kind of the big problem here. It doesn't address the Ruin Crab on the battlefield or the cards in Austin's hand yet.
And Noah can't cast it right now. I don't know the mode we did on the Kozilek's command, but let's say we had announced the draw one instead of spawn. It could have been a card though, right? I mean, it matters a ton on what was picked. I assume as well spawn is likely, but it doesn't seem unreasonable given Noah's hand a second ago to be like, yeah, I'll just go for a card and try and hit a double land and hide this World Breaker. So we'll see how it goes here. As finally, this crab is going to resolve its trigger and soon leave the battlefield.
Okay, sowing Mycospawn, another freshly minted K command in a forest. Hitting the basic could end up mattering. I'm now checking the deck list sheet. There are 3 basics.
Yeah, a lot of basics. Utopia Sprawl, White Orchid Phantom running around here. It was a spawn, so that is going to allow us to play Karn.
All right, Noah drawing for turn. Thinking through their options. Sanctum, we already knew about that one.
Chalice of the Void in the sideboard.
I keep looking at that one and going, what do you even put it on?
1 for the crab.
I mean, at this point, maybe.
I mean, the crabs get played early, but there's 8 of them, and it's like one of the few things you can actually do that doesn't overlap with you outside of Utopia Sprawl, at least in the Game 1 configuration.
All right, here's Karn the Great Creator. Noah starts thumbing through their sideboard. Is there a world where you get Tormod's Crypt? Okay, no, it's just Liquid Metal Coating.
Tormod's Crypt's reasonable, though. That is something you can use on yourself to stop a Drown the Lock.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely something that, Noah needs to keep in the back pocket if we draw something kind of big.
All right, and Austin knows he's basically never going to have more than 3 lands in play for the rest of the game, and that's if he hits all of his land drops from here.
Yeah, and it's hard to do that and have all the lands you need. As Ensnaring Bridge comes down, that's a card you highlighted maybe wanting to use here. And traditionally, this actually wouldn't be that big of a deal for a Karn. You know, we talked about something like Cityscape Leveler, etc. But we don't have those. And the Sowing Myco I'm sorry, the World Breakers have already been answered.
There's a Haywire Might.
Yeah, so it's Haywire Might and Bust. There's no Sages in this deck list. I mean, we have access to the Karn, so the Haywire Might can definitely come. But it's not going to be free.
All right, well, Black Source goes down for Austin as he takes a draw.
Oh, no.
No. Undercity Sewers. Oh, no. Mills a Swamp? Does that just mean he has more lands in hand?
It might. I could see the idea where Noah just doesn't have any black spells in hand, and it's like, I'm going to win. I just need to draw, like, Fractured Sanity over and over and over again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Really tough spot. And this is somewhere where if Austin can't cast spells, this Ensnaring Bridge won't even protect him.
Yeah, that's true. Theoretically, eventually our hand will get to the 7th spot you need. And Writhing Chrysalis, this is actually a great way to get under an Ensnaring Bridge, attack, pop all your Scions before damage, boom, hit you big.
It's definitely not bad. This is something that was the bane of MH3 Limited, and it's even starting to show up in Modern as of late, 'cause it's just fine.
Yeah, I mean, 2/3 that gets you 2 Scions. Sort of plays like an explosive vegetation half the time, right? And then also is a body with reach that comes up pretty big.
All right, now we're starting to see basic lands fall on Austin's side.
Yeah, and it looks like Noah has a spell.
Okay, Writhing Chrysalis growing after some spawns. Hit the dust. Stone Rain!
That's huge there. I mean, now Austin can't cast most of the mill spells that matter.
Uh-oh.
A few too many cards in hand to go to combat, it seems, as we are going to Surgical before attackers are declared.
So something that's interesting is Austin did play out what looks to be a Flooded Strand, and that's really hard to go after with Karn the Great Creator. It is something that can give Austin at least a turn or two of breathing room if this game goes much longer.
Yeah. The only limiting factor really is sort of the lands we could fetch. We have enough right now that we could fetch anything and still cast. Like we have 2 more black sources left in the deck, so as long as they aren't in hand, that's fine. And we have a bunch of islands. So Austin Clark, if we could float a couple of fetch lands, maybe he gets to cast 1 more big spell this game. And if it's the right spell, we talked about before, Tasha's isn't the greatest, but if it hits the right number of cards, it might be enough.
Okay, and here's Polluted Delta. I don't think this game's over. It looks like Noah's very far ahead, but I wouldn't call this a foregone conclusion. Yeah,
Austin definitely has game here. And like we were saying, if we can get 1 or 2 cards cast, this could be huge. And Austin, might even be able to get 1 cast, and then we do some searching for Noah, and then Archive Trap for free gets the game done.
Okay, also, hear me out. Karn could animate the Ensnaring Bridge, and Kozilek's Return could kill it.
That's true. That's something that comes up. I've done a lot of animate your bridge, cast my fury with Karn.
Yeah. Oh, Stone Rain. Again.
This is nice here from Noah. Activate the Liquid Milk Coating, forces the fetch, then you get the Stone Rain, and now use the Karn, develop your Haywire Might when this moment. You still interact with your opponent's mana on every turn, and this immediately, and yeah, you see Austin concedes, can't beat the Writhing Chrysalis with no lands.
Oh, or just
all lands.
Either way, Noah advancing to 5-0,